Recently, I'm sure our Pantho sir has been noticed that RMG leaders has set and they said, according to their 40 years of RMG export career, they have never faced such volatile and risky business prospect. I will come back to you. Before I come back to you regarding these subjects, I have one development. Washington Post breaking news that Putin rejects call for peace. Depends Russia's isolation and economic decline, 40% of state spending now military focus. See, 40% of GDP is going to spend for military focus. What is their military goal?
Well, in my opinion, Mr. Kanchan, let me also add on to your statement. The Kremlin tempers expectations as Russian spokesperson Dmitry Peskov stated that no miracles are expected from the talks and insisted Russia will pursue its objective without a clear timeline. So that's a very scary remark made by the Russian spokesperson. Of course, that only signifies that the peace talk that was said to be held today would not go as expected. Of course, Turkey, if I would say, clarify, is trying their level best to bring down this escalation, as it's not so far from their borders as well, and Turkey definitely has strategic interest to keep peace in the region as well. But the Russian GDP, 40% GDP towards spending only shows us how much of a threat NATO is to Russia as well. The minute NATO wanted to bring Ukraine on the table, that is the moment Russia had thought otherwise and started this war. So in my understanding, I don't see a deadline here. Even though the entire world demands a ceasefire, the entire world is now moving towards such a geopolitical scene where all the wars are stopped effectively. However, as of now, this Russia war machine is still very active and ongoing.
Just one question, as we are thankful that we have got such an international affairs commentator like you. You have a study on different conflicts and you are doing extremely well. I just want to give a special thanks from the SCTV authority. You know, can you remember that two-state solution has been signed when Bill Clinton was the president? He called upon Yasser Arafat, the ILO president, Palestinian president, and Isaac Rabin, and they have signed a two-state solution. For that, Nobel Committee has been pleased and approved a Nobel Prize for them. But last 2 years, 3 years, no world leader is talking and reminding themselves about this two-state solution. My question is, do you really believe the world leaders has changed their strategic policy regarding this two-state solution and they want to empower Israel? This is already decided because no one last 2 years is talking about two-state solution and that agreement. First you, sir, then I'll come back to
Thank you.
General sir.
Well, the two-state solution, many world leaders will always say that they're looking for a two-state solution in Israel or Palestine, but they say that with some kind of twist here. Two communities or two separate communities, religious communities, they are not seeking out peaceful harmony. What a secular nation looks at, we will allow all the religions to practice their religion without any kind of unfair treatment. The definition stands as so, but they don't see eye to eye on certain issues which are definitely rooted in history. However, the international world tries for this two-state solution. All the countries that there are, they would want to see a peaceful denomination inside that border. However, let me also give you something that's set to happen later this week. The UN sponsored a peaceful settlement conference on Palestine, which is set for July 28th and 29th in New York, which is aiming to address the Hamas disarmament, hostage release, PA reform, and possibly a new recognition for the state of Palestine. But it's very hypocritical, as Palestine has been there ever since 1948.
Martin Luther King's junior surveillance, and you said you gave a good picture, but how might Trump's new trade deals in Asia influence the upcoming US election and the Biden administration's diplomatic positioning on different countries?
Well, thank you, Mr. Kanchan. You look at Asia, Asia is now strong arming themselves between themselves so that their dependency on the greenback can be much less than before. They understand that multiple Asian nations in a preliminary had this tariff announcement. Majority of it was in South Asia as well as Central Asia. To my understanding, Donald Trump is definitely seeking out a trade war between all of these nations. But as per our previous discussion, Mr. Safat sir was saying, how can we understand make America great again? Initially, when such a tariff was determined way back in April or May, what happened was, if you look at the American companies, I'll give you one example of Walmart. So Walmart is known in America as a giant retailer and a warehousing retailer for the American general household. And what they said that the prices of certain elements have gone up, and in return Donald Trump had told Walmart to suck it up, meaning it will now affect the consumers as well as the corporations that support them. Definitely Donald Trump's such a call for a tariff is making sure of a new world order, in my opinion.
China become the largest manufacturing hub and economic hub of the world. United States is still the most mighty power in the world. My question is, with NATO expanding and the EU confronting internal unity challenges, how should Western alliances adapt to emerging multipolar threats? United States is losing its confidence on NATO. The NATO leaders has agreed 5% GDP sharing and funding into NATO fund, but the people of that NATO countries did not like that. They thought that this is a kind of robbery. How do you see the Quad will be successful while NATO is becoming United Nations is becoming powerless?
Well, Mr. Kanchan, we look at the American defense budget. It is nearly $1 trillion. You started your segment with how China is becoming an emerging power and how the population in India is ever so large. However, in my opinion, Donald Trump in greater aspects, United States of America, their defense budget is nearly $1 trillion. $1 trillion is very easily 100 countries' total GDP net worth. So, in my observation, what I see is that the world has started to shift towards another global power. You call it China. They started manufacturing almost every item in the household, and now we see that the Liberation Army, the Navy, the Air Force in China is definitely being strong armed. They have the technological expertise, and not only so, while they were manufacturing majority of the items required for the American household, they were also learning how these elements can be made better. As you know, I'll give you an example. Apple's iPhone has been historically manufactured in China.
Yeah.
Definitely that allows the Chinese local industries to understand what is being sold on the market in America, and this is how this Chinese advantage has come to the world stage, and now definitely it is taking in the form of a trade war with the US. But it's far too early, and I hope we don't see a very deadly disaster, military disaster between China and America. That would definitely be the climactic point in World War III scenario and situation.
Yeah, as you raised the tech manufacturing issue, I have a news. McKinsey halts AI work in China, reflecting the strain in US-China tech relations amid growing geopolitical pressure. Do you think this manufacturing will move into USA, and is it practically, technically or logically possible to keep American laborers to work in this kind of cheaper industries?
In order to replicate a manufacturing hub like China, and in order to replicate that in America, would definitely take a toll on the US reserves. Not only so, as history says, right now if an element or a product was created in America, the margin of what it would be sold as would be much higher than if it was made in China, and this is where the advantage lies with China. Of course, Donald Trump's Make America Great Again does promise of bringing millions of jobs in manufacturing in America, but that manufacturing element or that element would be definitely be beneficial to human life. They should focus more on innovative technologies so they can defeat China in such a purpose. But in reality, what is so far different is that in order to make America a manufacturing hub, it would definitely be dealt with much more tariffs in various Asian economies to hamper their own manufacturing.
I have a counter question for our international affairs commentator, because he belonged this generation who thrown out the previous government. I don't have any adjective for that government. My question is, do you think 1,400 people, young generation, sacrificed their life for an ordinary election, or election has been conducted in 53 years in the history in the same manner?
We should not try to conduct it in the same manner. Of course, we should definitely allow society to understand what a proper election looks like and how it's been conducted in a first world nation. Much of it, we can call it as reform, but institutionally we have to change. Bangladesh being a democracy, or it was labeled as, but we should start to understand how much so that the incoming government can do for our people. It always has to follow the people's mandate. And of course, as you said, 1,400 people gave their lives not for an election. I would also agree. Before such an event can take place in our nation, we must understand what it consists of, how it's going to be held, and how long will the results be calculated before we can arrive at a 300-seat parliamentary electorate government.